Good evening and welcome to the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, broadcasting live from Prince George's County, Maryland, just outside of DC. My name is Nicholas Brown. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Communication and Outreach. I'm so glad to have you all with us tonight. First up, I'd like to welcome Paris, who is with Joyful Signing LLC, who is making this event accessible to our folks who use ASL. So welcome to everyone. And thank you again, Paris and Joyful Signing, for supporting us tonight. The Prince George's County Memorial Library System has an amazing array of virtual programs, weekly up to 30 or 40 a week, which is kind of nuts, but we've been here with content for you all day, every day, no matter what you want. We've got it. And we have an amazing lineup of author events right now through September. And our, of course, special event for tonight is Byron Lane on A Star Is Born. We are very excited to have Byron with us, and we'll do a little intro of him in a second. Before I get to that, just want to invite everyone to check us out at pgcmls.info. Whether you're local or from outside of the area, we are here to support everyone. If there's anything that you need, just contact us on social media, and we'll be here to either provide the resource directly or to connect you with the right folks locally, wherever you are. Before I intro Byron, would love to intro Roswell, who is our interviewer this evening. Roswell Encina is the Chief Communications Officer at the Library of Congress. He is involved in all kinds of amazing things like the National Book Festival, the Library of Congress Gershwin Prize for Popular Song. If the Library of Congress is doing something cool, you know that Roswell had a hand in it. He has interviewed everyone from the cast of Queer Eye to amazing Pulitzer winners and all kinds of great folks like that. And he is very kind to join us tonight. He previously worked as Director of Communications at the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore and had a very successful career in broadcast journalism all over the East Coast and down into the Deep South as well. So thank you, Roswell, for being with us tonight. We appreciate it. And of course, our main attraction, Byron Lane, coming to us from Palm Springs, not Palm Beach.
Springs.
Sorry, my head is at the beach.
I know, it's happier there.
Yes. Palm Springs, California, of course. Byron is a really wonderful debut author. He's had a career in all kinds of different things, from writing plays and appearing in them as a performer to being in journalism as well. He is a winner of a regional Emmy from his time in journalism, which is really awesome. His debut novel, A Star Is Born, is based on loosely on his time as personal assistant to Carrie Fisher, which is really amazing. The book is one of the best summer reads this year, which is really exciting for us to have you along with us. People magazine called the book funny, dishy, deeply affectionate, and the force is with him.
Oh.
Byron also,
isn't that nice?
It is nice. Byron also wrote and co-stars in the play Tilda Swinton Answers an Ad on Craigslist, which had an amazing run at the Edinburgh Festival or Edinburgh Fringe recently. Yep. Has sold out all over the place, and we look forward to seeing a production of that once we get on the other end of COVID here. So without further ado, we'll turn things over to Roswell and Byron. We'll have an opportunity for audience Q&A towards the end, and we'll see you in the chat. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks, Nick.
And hi, Byron.
Hi, Roswell. Hi, friend. How are you?
Welcome to Maryland, and welcome virtually, I guess, anywhere. So I should say that, as Nick was saying, this book is one of the hottest books this summer. It's all over the place. I couldn't put it down, honestly, just because I grew up with Star Wars, and I was just very curious, with all your experiences and everything that was laid out in this book. I was laughing, I was crying. It's all in this book.
Cool.
I should ask you first, though, is how are you doing? I know you've had a very difficult past couple months, and I just want to make sure you're doing all right.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I just finished chemo for testicular cancer. My hair is growing back, so I'm feeling good about that. But I initially had it 5 years ago. It went away, and then a routine test showed that it came back, and so I did the chemo and got fixed up, and things are looking good. I might need one more little surgery, but that'll be it, and I'll be glad to be done with it.
You're looking great, though.
Oh, thanks, friend. Thanks.
And we're so happy that you're doing well. I should say, though, I've asked this to a couple authors the past couple weeks. I mean, because it's been such a weird year between quarantine and the transformative issues that this country is facing, especially this past June. What has inspired you? Has anything inspired you to write more or write something else? How's it for you?
Well, I'm going to pull my cancer card and say that the truth is I was really inspired by that whole process. So testicular cancer is really one of the easier cancers to treat if they catch it early. And it also usually happens to people who are a little bit on the younger side. So when I was in the chemo ward, I was surrounded by older people who were really struggling with their cancer. Some had been getting chemo for years and years, and so it made me grateful for the health that I do have, and people there were so kind to me. One lady knitted me a like a rainbow knit cap, and it was just really sweet. So I was really inspired by that experience.
So we'll talk more about any of your future work later on, though. Let's talk about the book, A Star Is
Yes.
Born.
Yeah.
For me, it felt like a love letter, honestly, to Carrie Fisher and to Debbie Reynolds and to the millions of Star Wars fans out there. Did Carrie knew you were writing this book, or was the inspiration after she passed away?
Yeah, well, she knew I was a writer, so that's one of the reasons why she hired me. Her team was looking for someone to help her with her writing, and I had this journalism background and all that. And then she was always very supportive of my project. So I did this movie years ago with Octavia Spencer, and she was supportive of that. And she tweeted about a web series I did on testicular cancer. But this book, the idea didn't come about until she had already passed. And I had done a post about her death and her life, really, and talking about how much I loved her and our great experiences together. And people really responded to that. And it made me think, oh, well, maybe I have something special to share and something more I can give about her legacy and her life. And so I decided to write a novel and fictionalize some of our time together, but also use some imagination to pay tribute to the spirit of our experience, which was a time of great friendship and a lot of laughter and humor and a lot of life lessons for, I think, both of us.
So just to give viewers here some background, could you give them a nice little fun little synopsis what A Star Is Born is about?
Yeah, so A Star Is Born is about a celebrity assistant trying to manage his eccentric movie star boss. And the two of them are polar opposites. He's very serious and closed off, and she's very famous and very loud and open. And but they connect on a theme of isolation, really. He's isolated by his life's fears, she's isolated by her fame, and they come together and in many ways save their lives.
So might as well state the obvious. You're a writer. Charlie, who's the character, is I could somewhat see you in it. The person, Kathi, you could somewhat see Carrie Fisher in it.
Sure.
How much of Kathi is Carrie?
Well, it's definitely fiction. So it's just it's a mix of life experience and a huge dose of imagination. So some things are parallel. For example, Carrie and I both traveled to see the Northern Lights together. We went on a gay cruise together, and in the book, the characters do the same things. But the antics are all different. The experiences are all different. There's lots of stuff in there in general about celebrity assistants in that world, and some of it is maybe inspired by my time with Carrie, but there's a lot of it that's inspired by friends of mine who were celebrity assistants and had their own crazy, wild adventures.
So everything that Kathi says, I'm like just waiting for her to open her mouth. Plus, I've got to admit, though, the past couple of days, I binged two of Carrie Fisher's two memoirs. The Princess Diaries was the last one, and Wishful Drinking. And I cheated a little bit so I could fly through all of them before our conversation tonight. I decided to listen to the audiobooks. So, it's in full Carrie Fisher kind of splendor when she's reading her books. And just based on the dialogue from Kathi, and I'm getting all confused in my head now. Kathi, in the book, she sounds so much like Carrie Fisher. How are you able to capture the essence of Carrie Fisher?
Well, I think it's part of having been her assistant for the 3 years. Essentially, your job is her life. So my job was to care about her, to care when she woke up, to care whether she ate, to care about her comfort and her business affairs when needed. And during the course of that kind of thing, I think you'd start to, you hear their voice in your head. And so for me, when I was turning to write this dialogue for Kathi Kannon and for Charlie and for all the characters in this book, I wanted them to be as rich as possible. And so I tried to tap into some of that, to find some of those unique turns of phrase and whatnot that would make their experience interesting.
I've got to ask you, though, did Carrie Fisher speak like this? I mean, I felt like it's so witty, and I could just see Carrie Fisher being exactly the same way.
Oh, she was wicked smart. She was a brilliant, brilliant genius, and everything out of her mouth was interesting. Even nicknames, like she often didn't call me by my real name. She had all these other nicknames for me, just because I think it just kept things lively. It kept people around her on their toes, and so yeah, everything was interesting. Not just her speech. Her house was amazing. It was full of color and life, and those are all things that I try to capture and put in the book.
Let's
The
let's talk
spirit
about
of those. Yeah.
let's talk about Kathi and Charlie's relationship in the book. And it's up to you if you want to put any parallels between you and Carrie. But how could you describe the relationship between Kathi and Charlie? Is it mother, son, brother and sister? Just best buds, girlfriends?
Yeah.
What?
Well, that's interesting. I think it changes a little bit. I think it maybe starts out. Maybe the first few hours do feel like Charlie is the employee and Kathi is the employer. But quickly, Charlie comes to realize that really he's the one in charge. He's the adult in the room. So I think their relationship shifts a little bit to where Charlie is the parent to this movie star, helping her get a calendar, import contacts into her phone, make her bed, whatever. Like live a life that's got a little bit more stability. But as they go along, she teaches him things too, and so I think that she becomes a bit of an important and dear friend who can help him kind of lighten up, who can help him kind of open his heart to life, having rich and kind experiences, things that he isn't used to at that point. And so I think they evolve towards so that by the end, I hope that their friendship together feels very meaningful and very hopeful and filled with humor and heart.
Why do you think Kathi was so committed in calling Charlie by his nickname? Nick won't allow me to say the nickname, but why do you think she was so committed in calling him that instead of his real name?
I'll answer that with kind of a little bit about real life. I mean, I had moments when I first started, because Carrie had a zillion nicknames for me. Some of them were not terrible. Like some of them were like Normal Twat or Jimmy. She liked to call me Jimmy. So some of them were harmless and some of them were like rated R. But early on when I started working for her, I wondered if the nicknames were a way to just keep distance, to keep someone just a hair or an arm's length away, so that you're not too embarrassed if you send them to the pharmacy to pick up like some cream.
Yeah.
But during the course of our time together, I truly think that she cared so much for me, for others, that the nickname thing really was just a way to keep it all energetic and lively. And in the same way, I think that Kathi in the book does the same thing. For me as the writer, it was a fun character choice to have her only use that nickname through the whole book until an important moment. And so in fact, I had a friend who did a read through of the manuscript, and she pointed out that Kathi used the name Charlie a little earlier, and so I changed it up to make it a more powerful, meaningful moment towards the end of the book.
The nickname almost felt like a term of endearment, especially midway through towards the end. It meant more than clearly just another nickname that she would give her assistant.
Yeah, when I think about that now, I mean that nickname you're talking about was a real nickname that Carrie called me, and it's a little dirty. And I do think that it's kind of sweet that such a dirty name can have such a kind and loving meaning behind it. And I think that's a real testament to who Carrie was, and I hope a testament to who Kathi is in the book, and that people can see that name carries with it a lot of love.
Speaking of Carrie, there's a lot of quotes here. I was telling some of my friends, it's one of those books that you just want to quote with people. And whether when you're drunk or when you're at parties, or like, how people quote Steel Magnolias or other shows. Yeah. I feel like that could easily happen with this book. I mean, one of my favorite ones is, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle, or acting. Were these some of the phrases Carrie used to tell you, or were some of these more from your kind of crazy brain?
Acting was from my crazy brain. When I think back at my time with Carrie, I think there were many moments where she would have and could have said that, like we were just having a fun moment, and she could have and would have said acting, but she never did. But it's not a job; it's a lifestyle. She did have things like that were similar, and what she was keying in on is how celebrity culture is so weird, so weird. And even a celebrity assistant job is so weird because you don't have normal hours, you don't have normal expectations, and even some of the, like, there's no HR department, you know. So
Like, who do
it
you
really,
complain to? You're right.
who do you complain to? Yeah. So it really, in many ways, it wasn't a job. And when I look back at it, and plus you add in the stuff about being someone's caretaker and caring to a level that you don't at Bank of America or whatever, you know?
For most of us, you know, especially living here in DC,
Yes.
living here on the East Coast, being a personal assistant to celebrities, not even, I mean, we can't go to, you know, Yahoo Jobs. It's like, oh, they're, you know, Jennifer Aniston needs an assistant right now. How are these, explain to the viewers, how are these jobs even, you know, put out there for people to apply? And what do these people do on a daily basis? As you mentioned, there's no HR department, so I can't even imagine or wrap my head around the everyday work aside from the errands.
Right. So there are a bunch of agencies where some celebrities or high-profile people will pluck folks, and you can search online and find like open applications, and it won't tell you who the celebrity is, but it'll say like pop singer needs someone to work, you know, 80 hours a week, you know, always available. And like sometimes those job descriptions are really depressing. I didn't have that experience. I was really lucky with Carrie, but so you can find some of those jobs online. I found the job because a friend of a friend worked at Gersh, and that was the same agency where Carrie was represented at the time. And she knew that Carrie was looking for a writer, so she just emailed me and said, "Do you want to work for Princess Leia?" And I was in a job I hated, and so I said yes. And that was a unique situation for Carrie also, because up to that point, she had said she sort of just hired assistants like friends of friends, or she met someone who was looking for work, and it was just that kind of thing. So she referred to me as sort of her first professional assistant, even though I really had no real professional assistant experience. And the job descriptions for a celebrity assistant can vary. So for me, it was mostly fun. We traveled around together. We ran errands, which were fun. The hardest part was just the times where Carrie like needed to make a decision. Like she didn't like to get into the nuts and bolts of travel and itineraries and bank accounts and things like that. But other assistants, they can work all day and be on the run all the time, or having to go to the grocery to find some obscure ingredient, or whatever. So so I ended up lucky. But if you're out there and you're thinking about a celebrity assistant job, just be careful. Check it all out. I find that if you're naturally a person who wants to be of service, then that's a good first step and a good way to maybe start fitting in.
I was going to ask, that was my next question to you, actually. If somebody wanted one of these jobs, what advice would you give them? And it sounds like it's very Los Angeles more than anything.
Yeah, it's very Los Angeles. And yeah. And I would also say, like, some of these jobs can feel a little bit like Downton Abbey, like you're the downstairs at Downton Abbey. Like, it's not a disaster, nothing wrong with it. But if you know that going in, it does help inform what's going to happen. And it can be a little confusing sometimes, because you do develop a sort of friendship, but it's also a working relationship. I mean, you're getting a paycheck, so it can be tricky.
Speaking of these assistants, you have a whole chapter or chapters about the other assistants in Los Angeles. Some of them have fun nicknames, from Titanic to Friends to and it kind of alludes who the possible celebrities are. Is this true, though? Is there like some underground association where all the assistants meet and share their war stories?
Yeah, it probably should be more underground, but no, it's real. There's a big group in New York and a big group in LA. I never met with their group in LA. I kind of got involved with them late, but I was on an email chain. So there's this massive email chain that they all use, and it's just they just continue to reply all every time they need to communicate, and it's reply all. Anyone know a chef who does the plant paradox diet, or anyone know a security guard who's looking to work like a couple hours a week, things like that. But it's a great resource. It's nice to know that there are other assistants out there who maybe are going through some of the interesting things that I was going through. But it's a real thing. It's a real world out there.
Let's talk about Kathy's house here.
Okay.
It's colorful. It's definitely different. How much? I mean, from the knocker to the furniture that's named after Chinese emperors. How much of that does Carrie Fisher have, or was her house this, I guess, fabulous and different?
So her house, you can see, she was very open about doing magazine articles, and she did that HBO documentary where you get a taste of neon lights in the mix of like old hardwood floors and stuff like that. And so there's a whisper of some of that in what I wrote, but I did try to bring imagination and elevate things. So there was no disco ball in Carrie Fisher's house. There was no ball sack door knocker. There weren't lewd acts being performed by priests in the stained glass. So I did bring some charge to some of those elements.
There's despite most of the book is very funny, there are some very serious subject matters in this, especially when it comes to addiction and mental illness. How intimidating was that to get it right, considering that's a major issue that this country is facing, especially mental illness? What did you have to do to make sure you make sure the characters were formed properly?
Well, it makes me feel so good and such relief to hear that you feel that I did it right in some way, because I wasn't sure and I'm still not sure. The truth is, I just tried to be honest. So I tried to capture the kind of honesty between Charlie and Kathi that I had with me and Carrie. So she was very open and honest about her struggles with addiction and mental illness. And so I tried to keep Kathi open and honest about her struggles, and also Charlie and his struggles with unhappiness and depression and all that stuff. And I found that in my own life, when I'm open and honest about my own struggles in those areas, other people are often like, "Oh, me too, I get it," and all that stuff just really, it's just good communication, and it just leads to honesty, and then that leads to respect, and then that leads to unconditional love. So it really does all sort of build on itself. So I just went into it trying to bring truth to who these characters are.
You did do a great job just weaving, being it sad and especially making sure it's still funny at the same time. Was that a big challenge? I mean, because it's hard to laugh at depression and addiction, but you did an outstanding job making me laugh.
Well, I think it's the same thing about honesty. Life really is kind of funny and kind of absurd, and we have these and we all have these crazy moments that we have to live through, and sometimes that means the car breaking down, sometimes that means a struggle with addiction. I mean, not that they're the same, but I just mean life challenges and life problems, health issues, whatever. And I've always found humor can be so healing and such an important part of it. And I know that Carrie lived her life that way. And she used to have this saying, something like, if my life wasn't funny, it would just be true, and that's unacceptable. Something like that, some nod towards the humor in life. And I think that for me, when I'm in touch with that, it just is, things are a little better.
Before I have you read a portion from your book, let's talk about Kathy's mom, Miss Gracie here.
Yeah.
Of course, when you read about Miss Gracie, you're picturing the one and only Debbie Reynolds, who also lived next door to Carrie Fisher. This is a big part of the book, a relationship between mother and daughter, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. What did you see? It seemed like such a real, authentic love between Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, and between Miss Gracie and Kathi.
Yeah, well, Carrie and Debbie were always very honest about their relationship. They had ups and downs, but they loved each other so much. Their family was really beautiful. Everyone was really lovely, and Miss Debbie really cared for Carrie in a profound way. I think that when Miss Debbie passed away, her son said that one of the last things she said was, "I want to go be with Carrie." Like that's the intensity. So, I saw their relationship. I heard that Miss Debbie said that, and so it's not hard to want to give that kind of spirit to the characters of Miss Gracie and Kathi. And so again, I just tried to turn to kernels of reality, which was respect and love and affection, and fill the characters of Miss Gracie and Kathi with that, and of course with family stuff. So we all have relatives who are maybe a little nutty every now and then, and so I tried to give them some qualities that would be charming and give a little bit of conflict and that kind of thing.
It's good that you mentioned what Debbie Reynolds says. There's something very similar in the book. You don't mind if I read it a little bit? It says,
No.
She says, never get old, dear. She says, don't live past 80, dear. She says, I'm only living for Kathi, dear. I could picture Debbie Reynolds saying that, I guess, to you. But it so reflects Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds as well.
Yeah, that was the way Debbie lived her life towards the end. I mean, she was a very generous lady. She had wonderful people around her, including her family. But there was something special she had with Carrie.
Let's have you read a portion of the book.
Sure. Yes.
Do you mind?
No, of course not. It's so exciting. So this is just a short bit. This is the part where so Charlie has just found out he has this job interview with Kathi Kannon. He pulls up to her front gate. They buzz him in. He parks in her wild driveway and runs up her wild walkway, and he knocks on the front door, and he can see through some stained glass that a figure is heading his way.
Fantastic.
The air seems to thin out to make way for her. The front door swings open, and like embers shooting up from a fire, she appears. Her hair blown back by the door, an e-cigarette dangling from her mouth. Her eyes widen and her lips part, and she says, "Hello, I'm Kathi Kannon from Jaws 3. I hold my breath and stare at her. Kathi Kannon, Priestess Talara, real and living, barefoot and disheveled, dressed in a flowing black robe over a loose black t-shirt and tattered black leggings. She's wearing no makeup, no pomp or circumstance, no care to give. Her face is tired but alert, familiar and yet mysterious. She looks so much like the woman I remember from my childhood movies, yet done in gravity and time like some kind of disguise, like some kind of mask that's taken up residence upon her, leaving her both an old, beautiful acquaintance and a strange, fresh new one. You answer your own door?" I blurt, a mix of surprise and enchantment as my eyes adjust to her like they're suddenly seeing daylight. "Yeah," she says, "we had a butler, but he died in the pantry a few years ago. Who are you?" "Well, I'm Charlie Besson. I'm a big fan." "You don't look very big," she responds, intimidatingly sharp for being so tiny, 5'1", with all that life squeezed into that little frame. She grabs the door as if ready to slam it on me. "I'm here for the personal assistant job," I say. "Not the colonic," Kathi says, disappointed, yanking the e-cigarette from her lips and letting her hand flop to her side, her shoulders slumping, her other hand still holding the front door, letting it sway slightly, closed, and then open, and then closed, and then open, as if she's considering. Excitement drains from my limbs. A colonic? Of course, this is why I was granted such quick entry. She expected someone else. I'm not who she wants. "Sorry," I start, feeling the magnitude of the not completely unexpected moment. My unforgettable hero has forgotten we had an appointment. Cue my shame, my horror, foolishness. Except I notice Kathi Kannon beginning to smile. She stands up straight, pops the e-cigarette back in her mouth, lets go of the front door, allowing it to swing open. "Acting," she says smugly, raising her eyebrows, proud of herself. "Wow," I say, speechless, entranced. "I'm just screwing with you," Kathi says dryly. "Come in." She turns casually and walks into the wonderland that is her home, motioning for me to follow. She moves with ease, her comfort and calm at odds with the commanding surroundings. We're in the definition of a great room, with vaulted ceilings and huge disco ball the size of an oven affixed overhead. Sunlight from skylights is hitting the little square mirrors of the ball and sending twisting and twirling bits of pinks and blues and purples all around. The far wall is covered in antique portraits of animals. Someone's beloved cat, an aristocrat's precious dog, a bird that looks suspiciously like Sean Penn. Kathi turns back to me as I pass through the doorway. "Please wipe your feet," she says. "The floors are made of endangered trees." And then he's in there.
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So, do you
Thank you.
remember how you first met Carrie Fisher? Was it something
Yeah.
similar to this?
Yeah, it was similar to that. I met with a manager first and at an office, and then I got her address and all that stuff, and went to her house. And I remember when I got there, she didn't answer the door. Someone else did, and they sat me down in her living room. And I remember the first time I saw her was running in her backyard. She was there were these French doors, and I could see her, and she had papers, and papers were flying. It looked like a scene out of a sitcom. And it was her book. It was one of her, I think it was Shopaholic. It were the pages of Shopaholic, and she was struggling that morning with figuring out how to fax them. And so she came in, and we sat and we chatted, and it was lovely and mysterious and weird, and started a 3-year adventure.
I would have been completely starstruck. I mean, it's Princess Leia, right? And you're like, I'm talking to the woman who had, bagel hair and was wearing the, the metallic bikini from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
She speaks very fondly of her time as Princess Leia. I first thought, maybe at the very beginning, maybe in the 80s or in the 90s, like most celebrities, they kind of like made fun of it. But towards the end, she really loved it. And I think her last memoir, The Princess Diaries, felt like a love letter to the Star Wars fans. And she was very profound about it, and very genuinely thankful for the millions of people who've watched Star Wars for the past 40 years.
Oh yeah, she loved it. She was a huge fan. She was so generous to fans who stopped her on the street or at autograph conventions or whatever. It was a big part of her life, and she really took seriously that she walked in Princess Leia's shoes or boots.
Let's talk about you mentioned some of it earlier, but what are your most favorite memories of Carrie, and maybe some of your not most favorite ones?
Yeah. Well, the hardest part of having been a celebrity assistant for Carrie was just trying to do the actual work, like I mentioned, like get her signature on checks for bills, or that kind of thing. But the most fun were the adventures. Those are the things that stick out the most. And we traveled to amazing places. I'm really just a poor kid from Louisiana who worked hard to try to have a journalism career that really didn't happen exactly like I imagined. And then I got thrown into this life with Carrie where I got to see and experience things I never would have thought, staying in fancy hotels and traveling first class. And one of my favorite trips with her was to see the Northern Lights, which started because she got a text message that weather conditions were perfect for the Northern Lights the next night or something like that. She used to get weather alerts from space.com or weather.com or something like that. And so she sends me this text message, "Hey, conditions are great for the Northern Lights. Let's book a flight." And I was like, "A flight?" She's like, "Yeah, we're going to Canada." Canada? I don't even have a winter coat. But sure enough, I made the calls, and we got stuff booked, and we were on a flight the next day, and we headed up to Yellowknife in Canada, and Carrie bought me a big winter coat. And then during the day we went dog sledding, and then that night we climbed into a tour guide's SUV, and he took us to this frozen lake, and we stood out there to watch the Northern Lights. And part of the reason it was really special for me because I had seen Carrie experience so much, and I knew that even before me, she had experienced so much life, traveled around the world more than once. She's been everywhere. She's met everyone. So it wasn't very often that I saw her in awe of something. And but she never saw the Northern Light, and she was excited to do it. And finally, it just felt like the right timing. And so to see her standing out there on the frozen lake, bundled up, looking up at those lights was a really special moment.
Let's talk about writing. Carrie was a writer. I remember when Postcards from the Edge came out and Surrender the Pink, and I see it vividly, her picture of her holding the book in the Time magazine review from maybe 30 years ago. What advice did she give you as a writer?
I picked up a lot just watching her, to be honest. One of the things she liked to do was read before she would write. She kind of referred to that as filling the coffers. So she would pick a book that she loved that was maybe underlined a zillion times. Sometimes she would pick a new book, and she would just read and kind of get in the rhythm of what kind of story she wanted to tell. And then she was actually really brilliant. She would handwrite everything, and I would go type it up. And of all the projects I worked on her with, I would say Surrender the Pink. I'm glad you mentioned it. It is one of my favorites, and it holds a special place in my heart because there was a time when she was going to maybe try to make it into a film. So she had asked me to type the novel or get the novel into Final Draft, which is some screenwriting software. And of course, the novel was written so long ago, like, was it on a floppy disk somewhere? I mean, no one knew. So I bought the Audible version of her reading the book and then sat in her living room with headphones on and would type it into Final Draft.
Oh my God.
And that was crazy, but it was also fun and cool, and I loved the book so much. So I don't know. I feel like it picked up a lot just being around her, to be honest.
And Carrie's been pretty good, like Postcards from the Edge. Clearly, it's fiction, but it's based on her life with her mom. How much of Postcards from the, or at least influences from Postcards from the Edge and the real life to fiction was influenced in your own book?
Oh gosh. Did
she give you any advice of how to fictionalize real life?
We never talked about it. To be honest, I think I didn't watch Postcards from the Edge until like a day or two before my job interview with her. I was a fan of hers. I respected her work, and I had seen Star Wars, but I wasn't a crazy fan. And in many ways, I look back at that, and on one hand, I have tons of regret. Like, I wish I would have memorized Postcards from the Edge so that I could have asked her every little detail. But I also think that it helped. It helped that I wasn't a crazy fan. It helped that I didn't have a million questions about what Debbie was like when Carrie was younger. So I think a little bit of distance there did help. I know, though, that I loved reading that book, and I loved watching that movie. And I know that Carrie loved to write in that style, kind of fictionalizing things. And that's the kind of book that I also love to read. And so that was the kind of book I wanted to write. So I just tried to take some inspiration and stay true to a spirit of something, but also make it an imaginative fictional work.
Before we take questions from our viewers here, let me ask you one more thing about Carrie. It's been, as I told you earlier, it's been such a crazy year between the pandemic and everything else. What do you think Carrie would have thought about 2020?
I had to immediately censor myself because I'm not sure about the cursing. She would have used curse words. She would have used curse words. Yeah. What a screwed up year, you know? And she was a person who was fair and honest. She loved President Obama. I just think that it would all be appalling. And sometimes I'm really bummed that we don't have her voice, because I think she would have been a loud champion for rights and equality and all the good stuff, and not stood by for a second with all this other shenanigans.
Yeah, she would have had a field day with everything happening right now.
Yeah.
Let's take some questions before I ask you more questions. Nick, how do I access these questions? Make sure I get it right. Uh-oh, I think I may have lost you all. Uh-oh. Oh, there they are. Hold on. Teddy from Bowie asks, can you describe the scene with the raw fish and the purse? Did that really happen to you two?
So it happened to Carrie. So we were staying in this hotel in Japan that was a converted emperor's palace, and you could only get there by boat. It was amazing. A friend of hers was with her, and so the head chef at this hotel heard that she was there and wanted to do this fancy dinner for her. And so we got the greatest sushi of all in all the land, and this big meal. And so anyway, she and her friend went off, and I was thrilled to have them go, because, to be honest, I'm the kind of person that recharges my batteries by myself. So to just be alone for a couple hours in the room, take a nap, read, whatever, was a treat for me. So they left. Then they came back a couple hours later, and she handed me her purse. I opened it up, and at the time she was doing Jenny Craig, and so we traveled with Jenny Craig, and she had a Jenny Craig like wheat oats or whatever, and had poured them out and had put the sushi that she didn't want to eat in the Jenny Craig bag because she didn't want to offend anyone. That's how she was. She was like, this bag be damned, and maybe even Byron, whatever he has to do to clean this up, but she didn't want to upset the chef, and so I did take the purse and the bag of sushi and threw it out into the river outside.
There's so many fun antics in this book. So before I get to the next question, I wanted to ask you if this was ever turned into a movie, who do you picture playing Charlie? Who do you picture playing Kathi?
Oh gosh, it's so hard to say. I mean, because it's my brain starts going wild with like fantasy wish list people, and I know that the like one fantasy would be that it's just a version of like Postcards from the Edge 2, where you have a Meryl and a Shirley again, and they just pick up where they left off. But you could also just have a fun tell a fun tale with like a Julia Louis-Dreyfus character, or Catherine O'Hara would be so funny, or Lisa Kudrow. So I don't know. There are so many brilliant actresses who would just knock it out of the park. And
who would play Charlie though?
It's harder for me to say. My first instinct is to go to someone who I feel like resembles me. But back in the day, I used to get that it was Elijah Wood, or lately I've had oh man, who's the guy? James McAvoy.
Yes.
But I don't know, maybe they're too old. Maybe it should be someone younger, like a Tom Holland, who can really kind of tap into that sort of innocent thing. But I don't know. I'm open to whatever happens.
So Disney, if you're listening, clearly we've casted your film. So
yes, this is easy. This is easy. Just make some calls, guys. Yeah.
Here's a question from Eileen Comey. Loved hearing all this. 2 questions. What was the hardest part of the book to write?
So the ending was hard to write, in part because in real life, me leaving Carrie's employment was really hard to do. In real life, so the ending, Charlie's ending with Kathi, is more complicated in the book. But in real life, it was hard to leave Carrie, because here I had this awesome job. Everyone wanted to talk to me about it everywhere I went. I walk into a room and people were like, "How's Carrie?" It wasn't "How's Byron?" And then slowly that I started to realize that. And on top of that, things were getting complicated with the job and with travel. I had just started dating my boyfriend, author Stephen Rowley of Lily and the Octopus, and the editor. But we were early in our relationship, and I was having a great time, and I wanted that to continue. But Carrie was going to London to shoot Star Wars, so I would have to move there for a huge chunk of time. And I wanted to do more writing and acting, and I couldn't participate in, I couldn't go on auditions because of the job. I couldn't meet with my writers group because the job hours were unstable. So it really just ended up me having to make this choice about, do I bet on myself and do I try to live my own life, even if that looks not glamorous, even if it looks like I have a dumb job that no one asks about, or do I stay and ultimately just keep living Carrie's life? And so that was a really tough decision, and I hated making it. And so when it came to giving Charlie and Kathi that kind of dynamic, I also hated writing that.
And sound like Charlie wrestled with the same issues too, aside from the big part, but he wrestled about his own identity when he was deciding to leave Kathi.
Yeah, I think it's a common thing for assistants. I just talked to a celebrity assistant yesterday who was saying that she left her job and was gone from that celebrity for 2 years, and she was aimless and a little bit lost. And then that celebrity ended up getting married, starting a family, or in a more enriching career. And then she went back, and things were different, and she was able to tap into more stability. And so I think that for some assistant jobs, it is just a common quandary.
The second part of Eileen's question is, what is your favorite part of the book?
I think my favorite was that Northern Lights story and the dog sledding. Maybe in some ways the dog sledding was more fun to write because there were so many. We did go dog sledding, but that scene was almost entirely made up. The people in the dog sledding place were made up, and but when I was writing it, I wanted to have a joyful experience at that part of the book. So I wanted them to experience something lovely. And I can remember when I was writing and just trying to imagine that scene, seeing myself in a snowy wonderland with Charlie and Kathi, and then imagining the white snow as paper, as the things that she intended to write. And so in my mind, that stands out as a beautiful, fun scene to have written.
Not to bust you though, but I thought your favorite part was going to be the end of the book during your acknowledgments. Do you
Oh my
want to
God,
share?
you're gonna mess up my relationship. Yeah.
Do you want to tell the story? You
Yeah,
can tell
sure,
it better
sure.
than I can, clearly. So.
Oh, please. So, my boyfriend Steven and I have been together for about 7 years, and we talked about marriage, but it was all just very casual, no big plan or anything like that. And then I thought to myself, well, it isn't every day that you have a debut novel come out, so I'm gonna ask him to marry me in this novel if I can. So this was the last minute because the advanced reader copies were already printed. So I had to call my editor and say, can I add a few words to the acknowledgments? And he was like, what words? Like, it's going to the printer. But he made some calls, and I said I said that the words were, "Will you marry me?" And so oh, that's our
There it
that's our
is.
picture, yeah. So I said, well, I want to ask him to marry me. And so James Malia, my editor, was like, oh, so cute, cool. Let me make some calls. And anyway, he worked it out. And when the book was printed, he had rushed out to me right away because I was nervous that other people might get it before Steve got a chance to see it. And the stakes were high because I know we love each other, but you never know if someone is going to say yes or no. And if he said no, then I've got all these books printed. It's with your friends at the Library of Congress. It would just be like a rejection for all to see forever. But I showed him in the back of the book. I said, "Hey, I changed up this section about you. Will you take a look? Is this okay?" And then he read it and he gasped. And then he said yes. And then we both have been kind of giddy ever since. It's been really sweet.
How have people reacted to it? It's the last, it's the last 3 words of this book. What kind of response have you been getting from readers?
People have been really lovely. There have been a few friends who initially I overheard Steve telling them, and some of them their reaction was, "Wait, that's in every book." And then other people are like, "You win the award for the best proposal." So I think it can go either way. But I'm so happy I did it. I'm so happy he said yes, and I'll be surprised. I was surprised with myself that I felt so giddy and excited about it. Because we've all lived through the marriage equality stuff, and I wasn't always sure how I felt about marriage, but I can tell you now that I'm excited and my heart is warm, and I can't wait till we figure out what we can do once this pandemic is over.
Well, congratulations. It was
Thank you.
absolutely beautiful.
Oh,
Here's a
thanks.
question from Ash from Greenbelt. Congratulations, and looking forward to reading your book. Were you involved in choosing Noah Galvin for the audio narration? He seems like a great choice.
He is amazing. I'll tell you, this is nerdy, but sometimes when I'm going for walks and all of my podcasts are exhausted, sometimes I'll just click on and listen to a little bit of his narration of the book, and it's so good. And I'm really lucky because years ago I had a long commute and used to listen to a lot of audiobooks, and was listening to a sort of self-help book called The Courage to be Disliked. And it was narrated by some guy, and I was like, this guy's kind of great. If I ever have an audiobook, I want someone like him to read it. And it was Noah Galvin. And then I did have an audiobook, and the wonderful people at Macmillan Audio were like, do you want to read it? Do you have ideas about that? And I said, this guy, Noah Galvin, he's a genius, an actor, he's hot, having a great moment in his career. And so like, we'll see. And so they reached out to him. He said yes, and it really was a sort of dream come true.
Do you give him tips? He nailed. I actually checked the audiobook out from the library just to listen to it a little bit. He nailed how Kathy's voice was, and I should say it mirrors Carrie Fisher's voice. Did he, listen to old Carrie tapes or something?
I don't know. They sent him all the stuff, and he sort of worked on his own with their own team, his own director, and all that stuff. And he and I got to chat on Instagram live after the book and the audiobook were out. You can go to my Instagram and watch the video. He's so cool, and he talked about how basically he was, because of the pandemic, he was recording it in his room, and he hung like comforters from the ceiling to kind of try to cushion the sound and all that. And it's really a fascinating experience how it all happened, and in some ways kind of a little bit of a miracle that he was able to and agreed to do it at all. It really was a dream come true.
Oh, he deserves a Grammy or something. I think they give away Grammys for audiobooks. He was fantastic.
He's fantastic.
Here's a question from David Luck. not only are you an excellent writer, but you're also a brilliant filmmaker. When can we expect, or what can we expect from you in 2021?
So David is a friend of mine. We used to work together in the news business in Alexandria, Louisiana. So gosh, film-wise, I'm not sure, David. I'm not sure what's next. I still have these moments where I'm waking up in the middle of the night and writing ideas down in my iPhone. So I'm not sure what's next film-wise or book-wise. Really, I'm going to work on a second book, but right now I just have a bunch of outlines.
Would you want to be a part of, if this is optioned out to be a movie?
Yeah, I'm open to whatever creative outlet the novel finds. All my projects really have been collaborations. So Last Will and Testicle was a collaboration, and then when I did the Octavia Spencer movie called Herpes Boy, that was a collaboration with the filmmakers. And in some ways, the novel is the least collaborative because they're the fewest hands in the pot. It was really just me, my agent, and my editor. But I know that if this transitions into a TV show or a movie or whatever, that we'll be working with other people, and that's actually really exciting to me to have fresh ideas come to the table. So I'd love to be a part of it.
What type of what kind of writing is your favorite? Journalism, books or screenplays, documentaries? Which road would you prefer to go down?
Well, the writing novels, this was my first novel, and I will say it's been the most rewarding in part because it was the most personal. Even though it's fiction, it was still inspired by someone I loved very much. And it's also been sort of the most successful. Like no one else has wanted to interview me about my testicle web series, So there's a special place in my heart for writing novels. And another thing that's great about it is that you really have much creative liberty. So with a play, I'm restricted to the set. With a web series, I'm restricted to what can I afford to shoot, how many rooms, and what are the limitations of the actors, that kind of thing. But for a novel, you have an unlimited travel budget. You have an unlimited budget for effects and for casts and for characters, and you really don't have to consult anyone on any of that stuff. You just go with your imagination. So it's freeing in that way.
Oh, look, Eileen Comey has another question. She says, one more. Apart from your time with Carrie, who else were you an assistant to?
Gosh, well, I've been an assistant to people who are both in the entertainment industry and not in the entertainment industry. And I've worked for accountants. I have worked for some other celebrities, but I can't talk about those folks. Their privacy stuff was very different from Carrie, and but I've worked for many, so I've seen lots of flavors, and that's how I'm so sure that my time with Carrie was so special.
Speaking of which, if you had a choice of just for giggles, you wanted to be an assistant again, and you could pick your dream celebrity to be an assistant to, do you have one?
Wow.
I know you kind of make fun of, not make fun, but you mentioned Diane Keaton in this book, but.
Yeah. Well, here's what would be great about working for Diane Keaton. I've never met her, and this is just purely from my imagination, is she's so quirky. She seems so cool and offbeat, but still grounded. So like, did you see the video of her trying to make, was she trying to make tortillas or something?
Yes.
She was in her kitchen and she was trying to make like a tortilla or something, and she needed a fork, and the camera person stayed on the tortilla, and she's like, I'll be right back. Clump, clump, clump. And you hear her walking. It sounds like she's walking for miles to get a fork. And then she comes back, and then, but look, here's what I learned from that. I learned she's got an interesting life. She's got a quirky kitchen, and she's grounded enough to go get her own fork. So I like all of it. So she's looking. I'm interested.
What's next for you, writing-wise? I know we asked you about films. Are you working on anything? Any fun ideas? Do you think there'll ever be a sequel?
Sometimes I think about whether Charlie and Kathi have more adventures together. But right now I don't have anything set. So I've just been outlining, and I'm just looking to see which outline fills out the most and the fastest, and will be the most rewarding to tackle next.
Very cool. So I'm going to bring back Nick here. We want to Thank you, Byron, and please say hi to Stephen. Thank you to
I
Paris.
will.
I encourage everyone, if you don't own it yet, or if you want to give it away as a gift, please go purchase a Stars board. Order it now. Try to help out your local bookstore in your neighborhood here in town. You know, we support all of them here in DC. So, and if you can't, please support your public library. Right,
Thank
Nick?
you, Roswell, and thank you, Nick. I'm so grateful to have been here. This is really cool. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you both. This was really lovely. I can't wait to see all of you in person at some time in Paris. You're invited too because you've been awesome.
Yes, yes.
So, of course, thank you to Roswell. Thank you to Byron, both for your work and your support of libraries and your support of the literary community beyond just writing and hosting here. The Prince George's County Memorial Library System invites everyone to join us for our upcoming author events. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we have Calvin Baker, who has a new book on race in the United States called A More Perfect Reunion. Then on Monday, the 24th at 7 p.m., we have Bassie Ickby, who is a Prince George's County resident and also New York Times bestselling author of I'm Telling the Truth, But I'm Lying, which is a collection of essays dealing with Black identity and mental health that came out last year, which is really well received. On Tuesday, September 1st, we have Prince George's County native Jason Reynolds in conversation with Roberta Phillips, the CEO of the library. He's also the Library of Congress National Ambassador for Young People's Literature right now, which is great. And then on September 9th, we have Dr. Michelle Harper, another best-selling debut author. Her book is called The Beauty in Breaking a Memoir. She is a native of Washington, D.C., and she's gone on to have a really significant career in the field of medicine. And her memoir is really beautiful, telling of her story and family challenges, but then also kind of overcoming the racial bias and systemic issues that exist in the medical profession, as in pretty much every profession in this country. So join us for all those. You can visit our website at pgcmlos.info to get the links. They're all going to be broadcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And thank you all again. We appreciate you. Have a good rest of the evening if you're going on to watch other exciting things tonight. We'll see you all on social media, and we'll see you next time for your next book, Byron.
Thank you, friends. I appreciate you.
Bye, everyone.
See you, Byron.
Thanks, Paris.
Bye.